February meeting of the network. Thanks for joining us today. If you're new, please try to get around and meet some of the people. I see some familiar faces here, but also I'm encouraged by some of the new faces that I see. I hope everyone had a nice holiday season. We'll take January off because the first Tuesday always falls so close to the holidays. And hope everybody is rested and refreshed and having a good 2013 so far. Get to our main program in just a moment. First, we want to hear from our sponsor. Our sponsor is Engineered Biopharmaceuticals. It's a locally based company, and it's facing a very daunting challenge. I was reading on the website today, part of their mission is to get the state-of-the-art and advance the state-of-the-art in medicine and pharmaceuticals, specifically biopharmaceuticals, but at the same time ensuring access to those for all Americans. So, talk about Engineered Biopharmaceuticals, their process engineer, James Gladd. James?
Hello, everyone. So, my name is James Gladd, and I'm representing Engineered Biopharmaceuticals. We're happy to sponsor today's event. I'm just going to take this as an opportunity to talk about our company a little bit. We are a startup pharmaceutical company, and we are hoping to lower the cost of pharmaceutical manufacturing and improve drug delivery through the intelligent design of drug products. And we're pursuing these goals by developing a process called atmospheric spray freeze dry. Now, what this process actually does is it converts an aqueous drug formulation into a dry powder. And the benefits of doing that is we can actually preserve the powder or preserve the drug product. This could be a large molecule protein drug, or it could also be a small molecule drug where you want to lock it in its certain conformation. And by performing this process, you can increase the shelf life of the product. You can eliminate cold storage, which basically means it no longer has to be refrigerated. This is very beneficial if you want to distribute these drugs in a developing country or somewhere where you may not have access to cold chain storage. And we can also improve the drug delivery by controlling the porosity of our particles. You can improve the reconstitution time, which makes administration in a hospital much quicker. And we can also control the aerodynamic properties of our powders, which can kind of target where you want that drug to go inside the lungs or inside another system. And we are very excited to be here, and we feel that we've made big strides in this technology that is both simpler, more economic, and has better products than our competition. In the 2 years that we've been in the DRBDC, we've improved our company's infrastructure by building a clean room. We've added analytical equipment for testing and characterizing the products that we make. And probably most importantly, we've hired new people to improve our team and expand our capabilities. We've also improved our process quite a bit. We can make products much faster now. We can produce a lot more products than we could in the past. And we believe the quality of our product is improved, which we're also much better at measuring now through our improved analytical techniques. So the next step that we hope to take is to move towards a contract manufacturing organization. And in order to do that, we are looking for partnerships both across the country and also in this area. We felt that the Dan River region has been very good to us, and we would love to find a partner right here. And we know that there are some companies around. So if there is a company, or if you know anyone that has drying needs for a particular composition or a compound that you've created, then please come talk to us. We can talk about your needs. We can also do characterizations and compare it with other products. So again, that's a little bit about what we do and what we hope to do in the future. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, James, and we hope you do develop some relationships, maybe find some partners here. That's the whole point of this organization. Our presenter today is the CEO and partner of The Bridge Limited, which is located in Charlottesville and also in Texas. He has extensive experience in business management and in technology transfer, especially on an international basis. The Bridge helps management solve the tough problems. Whether it's innovation, creativity, making the tough decisions, that's what the Bridge does in its consultancy. He's got a doctorate in international business management as well as master's and undergraduate degrees in electrical engineering. He's also a graduate of the MBA program of Stanford. It's my pleasure to present him. Please welcome Dr. Grant Tate.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be here today and visit this wonderful place and this wonderful community. It's a pleasant drive down here from Charlottesville this morning. And if I could have every small company I work with hire a process engineer, the world would be a lot better place. So one of the things we'll talk about as part of this discussion on innovation is moving the companies from a column of bunches into a process-oriented company. And so the theme of today, I'd like to talk about that innovation just doesn't happen. You have to manage it. Now, I separate management from leadership in this way because getting a product from inception out the door does take leadership, of course, but to really have an innovative company and to move products consistently from idea to execution takes strong management. I got interested in this particular theme because one of my clients came to me a year and a half ago and said, "Grant, help. We're just not getting any ideas out. My management team is not creative. Help us be creative." And I said, "Don't you mean innovative?" He said, "No, creative." And so I scratched my head a little bit, and I met with the management team, and we talked about creativity for a long while, and we defined some of the barriers to that, which I'll talk about a little later on. But one of the things that this particular company tried was to boost the ideas coming out. They set up something in their IT system where everybody could submit their ideas every week. Weren't getting enough. So guess what? They said, you only can get your paycheck if you submit 3 ideas a week. It's like, oh gosh, well, let's now put more restrictions on the idea process. And so at the time we began that project, they were getting list and list and list of things from people, but nobody did anything with it. It was just, basically, you could have just thrown the ideas out there in the hall and swept them up in the afternoon. So why innovation? Of course, it's survival these days. And innovation, of course, is not just about products and services. It's also about better marketing. It's about better ways to work with employees. It's about better ways of designing your workplace, better ways to have great buildings like this. So there are many, many ways of using it. So I brought my favorite egg cooking pan. And so you can think about creativity as there's water in the pan, you put heat under it, and ideas boil out. Steam comes out. But what happens to the steam? It goes out in the air. There are lots and lots of programs you can find to increase the heat or to boil the pan, gather more ideas, but unless you do something with ideas, nothing happens. We always hear about thinking outside the box. And I brought a box. I decided I was going to bring a little box and a big box because our boxes vary a lot. What do you think constrains our box, our thinking process? History, culture, comfort. The company we work in, the environment, how we were brought up, our language. And And so the idea of the kind of constraints makes us limited in the way we think. One of the classic exercises in teaching creativity is a paperclip exercise. In fact, it's one of the tests for creativity. How many uses can you think of in 5 minutes for a paperclip? So we all write them down like this, and depending on that box, the culture, your job, all the things you think about, that helps determine your list. So now let's think about if you were a brain surgeon, what could you think about in terms of the way of the uses for a paperclip? That's easy. A gynecologist, a veterinarian, an auto mechanic, a tribesman from Kenya. And so each person could look at this thing, and maybe if you've never seen it, you could use this device to hold pieces of paper together. You could think of a lot of ways to use that. So if you want to increase your ideas, that's coming, that you're limited by your own box, then one of the things you can do is try to explode the box, to recognize your own limitations and to say, I'm willing to accept more. Now, if you're within a company, that box is heavily decided for you. What are the things that create the limits? How much time you're spending on the job, whether we accept new ideas or not, whether this organization is willing to consider something that's off the mainstream. Our mission, our vision, those sort of things say we will accept something, a new idea within this framework. Something that's way up there is not something we think about. So it's important to understand the framework. If you're working in an organization, then generating new ideas becomes important, but it's also important to know what are the ideas that are going to be mainstream, that are likely to be accepted. So how do we get better ideas? Boils down to diversity. It's not just about ethnic background, which of course has a factor, as you see here, different people working together, but it's also about their orientation. And a diverse group can generate new ideas if they're willing to accept the new ideas from the other people who are, in fact, different from themselves. So this is an important team aspect of the creative process. Innovation, on the other hand, is, in this case, capturing the steam and trying to do something with it. And that is, innovation becomes then a process. So if you want to think about thinking processes, creativity is an expansion process. Expand your thinking, think of new ideas going this way, and then innovation becomes the convergence process. Divergence, convergence. So I'm trying to capture all those ideas, mold them into something that's useful, and find a way to get it into practice. That's innovation. So creativity without innovation is frustration. That's like the company I was describing. But innovation without creativity is close to impossible. So let's take the startup organization. You provided a really good example. I've been working with another biotechnology company myself, and their big challenge is to move from a lab environment where pretty much they operated in an ad hoc environment. Yeah, they had some processes, but they are not very easily scaled upward. And so in the startup organization, you start out with a couple of people in a garage with an idea maybe. They had a few more people. They are pretty loose organization. They have some relationships. They may not even have decided who's to be president of this group. Moves around freely without constraint. But then they start to need some processes. Whoa, we need a way to process expense accounts. Whoa, maybe we need a way to produce this product or idea over and over. And so then they begin to form the process layer of an organization. So let's take a look at this company 20 years out. And that's the way it's going to look. it's going to be basically a process-oriented company, perhaps. Classic example of this would be a big insurance company whose job is primarily processing policies. To invent new products and processes in this model is really hard. As you may know from my background or may not, I was part of the original personal computer team at IBM. And the personal computer team was spun off into its own little organization because this couldn't produce the personal computer. So then we put them two together, and let's look at an innovative company. This is all about processes, doing the same thing over and over, getting better incrementally, perhaps. But to be able to be really innovative, to develop new ideas and new ways of doing things, you need the ad hoc layer. A more loosely organized structure that can operate on new ideas and to move them into practice. Moving them into practice then says have to have a process that moves ideas and capabilities from here into the process layer. University of Virginia a few months back had a meeting where they pulled in CEOs to talk about innovation, and one of the primary points they brought up was, we don't want everybody innovating or creating. Guess what? It's going to screw up our processes. Yeah? So if you're trying to run an organized process and everybody in it is sort of tweaking things, then you have no idea what's going on. So you want control in this layer. So if I'm trying to move a new process, for instance, I have a new idea for producing this thing we're producing, I pilot test it, I check it out, I do the prototypes, and I have an organized process for moving it into production or to move it out to the marketplace. The screening process is extremely important. Let me back up. I think we skipped something here. So an innovation process then looks like this. And you notice in my definition I've said that innovation includes the idea generation. So back here we're generating the ideas. Though we have a way of capturing those ideas and putting them in a place where we can look at them. We sift and evaluate them. We choose the ones that are important to move through the rest of the process. We do prototype testing or model the process. We decide whether that's workable or not. We then design the final processes to produce that thing, and then we implement it. And then there's a feedback loop to see whether we did it right. That's a typical generic innovation process. And back to the point, it doesn't just happen. You have to manage it. And if you don't have this process in your company, then you're probably choking good ideas. So the idea of the small company I'm working with, to move from a lab environment to this, we're gradually trying to implement this process. They have to have an organized way of developing ideas. They have to design their framework and then have a process that goes step by step till the final end product. So the screening process, that second step, third step, is you then have a criteria that you judge the ideas as they come through. What's the business case for this? Does it align with our strategic goals? Is it profitable? What's the level of risk? And so forth. In your brochure, you'll have a checklist, which I'll show you later on, about how to, some ideas to check your company. So that checklist then, this process is, how do you look at your own organization and see if you're geared up for innovation? So here's some things to consider. First of all, do an assessment. Let's ask ourselves some crucial questions and then decide if we're really set up to implement innovation and to see how well we're doing. Let's evaluate our portfolio. What's our portfolio of new ideas, of innovative products, and so forth? When you do a portfolio evaluation, you also look at your current product set, and there's a classic curve, of course, which is you project out 5 years, look at what part of your profitability is going to come from existing products or services, and what additional ones you need from the innovative process. I want to engage all the people in the organization to make sure that they understand what we're trying to do from a business standpoint, also from an idea standpoint and innovation, so we have everybody working toward the same goals. Have a clear statement of our strategy and our goals, and that goes into an action plan. What are the things we're going to do to really improve our innovation process?
Grant, when your hand gets real close to that screen, it looks like it's making a move. So.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I think so. It's. I think it's. I didn't realize that a timing was built in. I may have done that by mistake. Then here we go again. Then you design the process, and in order to make this thing work, and here's where leadership counts, is you have to have champions in the organization who can lead your main innovations through the process. And then develop a measurement process for it. Here's the checklist. This is in your brochure, and just like Dave's 10 questions, these are the 10 questions I think are important. And this question of do we have an innovative culture, that's a key leadership element. Main question really to me is for organizations is do you want to be a roaring success or do you want to be just another company? My argument would be is that if you aim for roaring success, you're probably aiming for survival. If you're just another company, your future is questionable. So innovation produces changes are essential to the survival, but it's not about secret formulas, it's just good management. Okay, I'm open for questions. And if you don't have any for me, I will ask you some.
You mentioned that bringing a team together and then that team basically having a common goal. I'm sure you've had experiences of people going against change at all. How do you combat that? Or is there a particular kind of approach that you might say?
Yeah, let me tell you my gut reaction, and then we can laugh about that and move on. I usually tell people that I meet for the first time that they talk about questions like that. I say, well, I have a 1 week organizational change profitability fix formula. And that is, within 1 week, if I can define those people who are a drag on the system and the company can get rid of them, the performance goes up amazingly. And so I think in sort of translating that to the practical thing, if you have a small team of people starting an organization, then it's crucial that they decide on the common goal. If they don't, then literally somebody either has to change or move.
Well, maybe it's not necessarily your organization that is resisting change, but maybe the society or the area that you're trying to do this change might be in itself resistant.
Yeah, and my dad had a formula for that. It was like another one of my formulas. He said you can roll a cannonball at a frog, it'll jump out of the way every time. But if you roll at BBs, it'll eat them until it can't hop. And so in designing, if you're into a market that is not likely to accept a new product, then you have to find a way to incrementally move it through. And that might mean choose a smaller population, get that to work. And this works within companies as well. If you're trying to implement change in a company, then, and this happens in process improvement, by the way, which is you get a small group working with it and saying, aha, wow, this is a great thing that we're doing. Let's see if we can expand it and move it to other places. I think that works in society generally as well. And if you look at, I'm not a sociologist, but sociologists would say that you can't create the big bang. You have to do it a little at a time. And that would say to make a plan for incremental change and be doggedly pursuing it. That help?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
What are your thoughts on rewarding employees for idea generation, both with those that have hard dollar savings as well as soft dollar savings? And not, it's obviously not just savings, but innovation that doesn't have savings. How do you reward them?
When I worked for IBM, they had a suggestion program that did just that. Anybody, anywhere could send in suggestions. We had forms all over the manufacturing plant, and there was a committee that evaluated them first screen, and then they sent them to experts who could say, who knew about this thing. And I would say it worked pretty well, but the current information on what motivates knowledge workers isn't the dollar value. It's more about intrinsic awards, which is that you're more likely to keep submitting them if I have a way of coming to you and say, thanks a lot, that really was a big help. And maybe I recognize you in a department, a company meeting or something like that. And that really says that the biggest, going back to the company that was doing the punitive thing of not paying if you didn't do ideas, but they weren't getting back and picking the best ideas and going to the people and said, whoa, that's really something. Another reward you can do for people is that if they have a great idea, you have to have them implement it as well, to sort of be the champion that takes it through the process. And anytime you can do that, I think you've really scored a real win. So I guess the bottom line of that, I'm suspicious of paying people for good ideas, which would also say, and I think the schools are learning the same thing about students. There are programs in the countries, that pay students for getting good grades, but that the sort of the human feedback, pat on the back, the good relationship building is more valuable than money. We do assessments. Personal assessments is sort of a bank of three things: DISC, a values assessment, and something called attribute index that basically is thinking process. And the values index looks at 7 values. One of them is economics. And I have to say that the population I work with are CEOs and VPs and directors and project managers and so forth, so I'm dealing at the professional level, granted. But it's been interesting to me that economics indicator is seldom the high one. And people are rewarded. There's another one that's aesthetics and another one that altruism. And those two that are soft things tend to score a lot higher than economics. Now, the thing that in dealing with a group, when we give those tests to a group, we can find out basically what's likely to motivate the group. So a couple of counter examples. I worked with an organization, government contractor, 125 people. Every Friday afternoon, they had a big gathering where they served hot dogs at lunch and games and so forth. And I interviewed the people saying, oh, God, that Friday afternoon, I had to go to this thing again? I said, why don't they just give us an afternoon off? And the point was that there were a few people, I think in the HR department, who liked to have parties. Everybody else it was demotivating. And the lesson behind that was know what motivates people and try to reward them for who they are. Don't make generalizations. Yes?
Can I ask a question? On the couple of slides back, you had a roaring success for another company. So what happens with a company like Dell, who are now going to privatize themselves, even though they were very innovative. Contrast that with a company like Nestle, which has been there forever, and you think would probably be process-oriented and somewhat stodgy, but are extremely successful within the company and also on the stock market.
Yeah, I haven't studied Dell, but my impression is they were captivated by the business model. They were experts in that supply chain model, and I think they got overwhelmed with it that this is always going to be a success. I don't think they had the innovative layer. I'm not sure. That's my suspicion. When I go look at it more deeply, then I'm certainly going to ask that question. I don't know a lot about Nestle, but what I have heard about them, particularly in Europe, is that they had people that are primarily engaged in innovation. Back to the IBM story for a minute. This is an old story, but back in the PC days, there was a guy named Don Estridge. Strange pick for this job. He came out of the Federal Systems Division that you wouldn't think would be very innovative, but they picked him to be the head of this small group that was going to develop a personal computer. And it was done at the behest of John Opel, who was the CEO at the time, who said to Estridge, "We're going to free you from all the constraints of how you do a product, how you release a product. Basically, go out on the hill and develop this PC. You've got 1 year, and it has to be $1,000 or less." And at the time, IBM knew nothing about retail sales. We had nobody. The only thing that we had sold in retail was basically supplies, ribbons for typewriters and things like that. And so we had to build up the whole skill capability of how do you go out and sell a computer on the open market. So Estridge built up his own organization and didn't have to go through all the checkpoints. He did go to need a processor, brains of this thing. So he went to the components division in IBM, said, "Here's what I need, specifications. How much will it cost and how soon can I have it?" And they said 2.5 years, and cost was, I don't know, what big. Same thing with the software. Need this operating system. Went to the programming division, same thing, 2.5 years, 3 years, we can develop this thing for you. It's a lot smaller than a big OS, but, still going to take time. So basically, went to Intel, bought the 8080, and to the story about Microsoft. Went to Bill Gates, who got DOS. And so a sort of personal story. I was riding with Don Estridge in Boca Raton from one building to another. The PC division had just crossed $1 billion in sales. And I said to Don, if you were running your own company in the open market, you and your team would be millionaires by now. And Don was driving, and he said, think of all the security we have, the great benefits and great company to work for. And then he stopped and said, "Isn't that a pile of crap?" So we had a good laugh there, but Don unfortunately went down in a plane crash over Dallas a few years after that. Any other questions? Yes.
I'm curious, when a company goes through a major innovation or a major change in policy, say, just as a way of changing its organizational focus, what strategy do you recommend in terms of communication, not only internally but externally to its stakeholders, getting that word out?
Yeah. Well, internally, I think it's probably an easier answer than the second one. Internally, I'm in favor of open communications overall with all employees as much as possible. There are certain things that you have to protect, but I think if a company is going through difficult times, to let people know it as soon as possible. If there are going to be big changes, also give them the information to help them decide what needs to be done and particularly where we're headed. And if we don't know where we're headed, then let the people know that we don't know and help them decide. On the externals, much harder to me. I watch some small companies, and the thing I notice about them is the ups and downs, just based on the sort of the public information, and also with regard to social networking these days. A friend of mine and a colleague in this kind of business is an expert in public relations and social media. And my basic advice is to call her. You know? But the thing I would say is plan actively. Don't wait till a crisis comes up, because we all know when the crisis hits and you have to manage the bad press, you're not in control. So that's not a good answer to your question, but that's my thoughts on it. Yeah. Yes?
You had mentioned that innovation essentially has to be managed. Is there any kind of tricks or tips that you may have as far as something you've done to kind of cultivate innovation in a company?
Yeah, that last slide about decide what kind of company you want to be is a crucial first decision. And that establishes the environment, and get everybody aligned in where we want to go and what we want to do and what kind of company we're going to be. One of the small companies I work with is working with a CEO on a regular basis, and that is the question that he and I are examining right now. And that he's really looking at the bounds of the company. He's got a strong research base, companies operating here in this box. And the question is, there are some opportunities to expand the scope of the company into these other areas. Is he willing to take the risk and get the funding that it takes to go win? And that is a you bet your company kind of decision. So my comment to you would be to clearly look at the strategy, clearly look at the direction, decide what it's going to take, and then move in that direction. There's a great little book that's called Business Model Generation. So if you're in the innovation business like you guys are, this is a way that you can basically put a plan on one chart, and it's really good. And if you, I've listed my email and so forth, and if you want copies of the charts, just let me know, and I can also let you know some of those references. Okay.
Any further questions for Grant? Thank you very much.
Well, thank you all. Thanks.